Okay, thank you and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Anthony, the Academic Registrar at Humanitarian Global. We are glad to have you join for this wonderful session where we're going to look into a topic around the area of procurement and supply chain management. But before we get into that, I would like just to give you a brief overview of who we are as a Humanitarian Global Institute, what we do. And to begin with that, I've shared my screen. So just to give you an overview. And we are an institution that is based in Nairobi, Kenya, with our main focus being to work with both humanitarian and development professionals like you who have joined us today in regard to capacity building and training. So that is what we focus on. And among the key areas that we manage to tackle, we do offer training and learning. And this is achieved through the online courses that we offer, training programs that we also get to offer to our participants. We also organize for webinars like the one that we're going to have today. We also do organize for training workshops. So you might be here and you are in charge of a team. So that means you can reach out to us and we're going to work with you when it comes to development of bespoke training programs for your team. We also do organize for conferences to humanitarian and development professionals. We also do work with you in the capacity of team building and also capacity development of your team. In addition to that, we also do provide consultancy services. And that means if you're there and you have a task that you're working on as an individual or maybe as an organization, you can always reach out to us and we are going to be in a position to work with you. So we have a pool of experts, like today we have one of our experts who is going to take you through the session. And that would mean that you can always use our personnel in case you need assistance in that capacity. In addition to that, we also do make sure that we can promote and champion for humanitarian work and also provide humanitarian resources to our participants. And how we manage to do that, we have a humanitarian global platform. And this is a forum that would help you to link up with other professionals from different parts of the world. So today I can see based on the charts, we come from diverse regions. That means we come from different countries, different continents, and that would mean that through humanitarian global, you are in a position to even make sure that you can link up with other professionals. So how to go about that? As you can see, I've switched my screen, my shared screen. Once you go to the Humanitarian Global website, there is a link for Humanitarian Global Community. So I would urge all of us here who are in attendance, make sure that as you follow up with the session, make sure that you can register to be part of the Humanitarian Global community. So once you click on that link, you'd be redirected to the forum, and this is where you can even post your questions. This is where you can interact with other professionals. So the step is quick, very easy for you to join. So there's a link for you to sign up. So make sure that you can click on sign up, fill the simple form. As you can see here, you just have to type your email, choose a username, your full name, and then a password. So after you've done that, that means you're going to have created an account. Then you can proceed to log in. After you log in, this is where you land. And you can even see the topics that we've been able to discuss previously. So that means once you log in, you can even try to locate the area of interest. So maybe from this session, maybe we anticipate you to be interested in procurement. So make sure that you can click on procurement. The first thing is for you to introduce yourself. So there's a topic here, just click on it and then you can introduce yourself. Let us know from which country and also which organization you're connecting from. And then in case of any question, you can always post it under this forum. And then our professionals, they're going to respond to you. So it's quite a lot. And the moment you join, you're going to learn more. You're going to get better in terms of empowering yourself, getting to learn from each other and having the platform where you can get to know how are maybe other professionals conducting the same activities in their countries or maybe regions. So this is more than learning, and we encourage you to be part of this forum. So as we continue, I'd like also to say that Apart from what we are going to focus on today, we also do tackle other areas when it comes to capacity development and training. And these include monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. We also do train on water sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies. We also do train on procurement and supply chain management, like we are doing today, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal, infant, and young child nutrition. So those are among the key 7 areas that we focus on. And the other upcoming areas include public health, project planning and management, gender-based violence, data analysis, child protection, climate change, and also humanitarian principles and essentials. So with that said, I would like not to take too much of your time. I would like to invite again Eric, who is going to invite the main speaker of the day. And maybe just to note, we already have your details. So on the chat section, let's try to, not to share our personal details there. Just post your comments, and for the questions, try to dedicate them to the Q&A section so that we can have them under one section, and that would help us as we respond to you. So thank you so much, and as we continue, try to share the link with your colleagues. This is a free event, so that means you can share with many colleagues, you can share within your networks. We know you have WhatsApp groups for your maybe colleagues and professionals who are in this field. So feel free to share the link with them so that they may also join and get to benefit. And also in case of any inquiries about our other programs or maybe further training and also how to get certificates for our other programs, you can always chat with the host with the panelists who are here, and they're going to respond to you. So thank you so much, and back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Anthony, for that introduction. And for our next person is our key speaker, Susan. Susan, are you there with us?
Hi, Eric. Yes, I'm on the call.
Yeah, so you can maybe start by sharing your screen and then giving us then heading over the session for the day.
Thank you so much, Eric, and good morning. I believe most people are joining us in the morning. My name is Vixen Deritu, or Susan. I'm a practicing procurement and supply chain professional. I am also a trainer with Humanitarian Global. So amazing to see all of you join the call today, and looking forward to interact more with you. Today I'll be talking about ethical issues in procurement and supply chain management. If you have a question, please channel it on the Q&A section where we'll be able to respond at the end. I'm going to do either an hour or an hour and a half of the presentation, and then the rest of the time I'm going to dedicate it to questions. So feel free to send your questions through the Q&A tab. Great. So we will start with what we expect to gain by the end of the session. So one of the things we're looking at is for you as a participant joining us today to be able to understand the effects of unethical practices that are related to procurement. The second one is for us to understand and map out corruption risk in the procurement cycle. We're going to go through the procurement cycle from the beginning to the end, and how to be able to recognize and point out where there are corruption risks or where corruption might occur in the procurement cycle. And finally, we're going to discuss on how to eradicate unethical practices in organizations, or the different risks that we have mapped out. How can we overcome that in our workplace? Great. Let's start with ethics and just trying to define what are ethics. And ethics is just values and practices and customs that guide the behavior of an individual. So it's just like a set of practices and values that governs you as a person. Things like integrity, things like honor, fairness, justice, honesty. That is what we define as ethics. And in the workplace, ethics is in a matter of behaving within the stated standard of the group to which one belongs in. Therefore, when we talk about ethics in procurement and supply chain management, these are a set of behaviors or practices that you are expected to carry yourself with as a practicing procurement and supply chain professional. And we're going to dive deeper into that in the next couple of minutes. Here I've just put different terms to define what ethics are, and that's what I said about integrity, just being truthful, moral, principle, honesty, right, fairness. If you're thinking of any other word that can define what ethics are, you can drop that in the chat. If you feel there is an adjective that I have left out in defining what ethics are, yes, and let's define what integrity is. Integrity in the procurement scope can be defined as the use of funds, resources, assets, and authority according to the intended official purpose in line with public interest. So for instance, if you are a practicing procurement professional, if you're purchasing or procuring for your organization, you're expected to allocate or use the funds and resources that have been given in accordance to what it has been stipulated. If the budget is 1 million, integrity looks like spending the entire 1 million for what it was allocated, and if possible, spending even less and being able to save for your organization. Integrity in procurement is a very powerful tool for effective services and delivery as such to increase trust in the state institution. One of the expectations that we are expected as procurement professional, or what governs how we conduct our work, is how much integrity we have as people. I feel like procurement is it's a very sensitive area, and if you do not have integrity in your personal life, it's very difficult for you to showcase that even in your workplace. We're going to discuss about corruption risks, and you will see some of these things come out from who we are as people. And that's why there is this common saying that says that procurement is it's bringing your personal self into the workspace where your integrity is tested, your genuineness is tested, your character is tested, because you're dealing with resources that are not yours, they're for organization, and you need to manage that in a manner that benefits the organization without thinking about yourself. Let's discuss about areas in our workplace where absence of integrity might be manifested. And the first one is corruption, including bribery and kickbacks, nepotism, and misuse of public office for personal interest. So bribery is where you get something for I'm trying to get the right words, but where you ask for a favor that you do not deserve to be able to give a service or a product that person was due. For example, when police take bribe, that means they're supposed to be inspecting how cars are doing on the road, but then they decide to take a bribe and let those people go. Kickbacks is where you receive a gift from a supplier, and I'm going to define all those terms in the next coming slides. The second one is product substitution in the delivery, which results in lower quality materials. How this might show itself in procurement is, for instance, you have a purchase order. A purchase order is the document that you give to the supplier. The purchase order says quality B of the products, but you make an agreement with the supplier to bring a lower quality so that you can have you can gain. So if the quality was quality B and you go to quality C, there's a saving that has been done and you split it with supplier. That is what you're talking about, product substitution in the delivery. The other one is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest, it's where you have an interest in something. I think the perfect example is you're procuring for an organization, you're procuring papers and stationaries, but in real sense, the supplier is yourself. So the company that is supplying the organization is your company, and that is conflict of interest, because you cannot be the person who is buying for the organization, and at the same time, you are the person who is supplying for the organization. The other one is collusion. Collusion is where you collaborate with a supplier to be able to take advantage of an organization. The other one is abuse and manipulation of information, either where procurement professional hides information from the supplier or shares information with suppliers that are not supposed to be sharing. For instance, you're receiving requests for quotations and suppliers are sending in quotations, but then you share out this information with other suppliers for them to be able to share a favorable quote. So that is abuse and manipulation of information. And the other one is discriminatory treatment in the public procurement process. Examples are where you'll find there is difficult time for new suppliers to join an organization, and that is discrimination, or where there is a favoring of other suppliers on top of others, or where procurement professionals get to manipulate the process in order to ensure that just a specific set of suppliers are in the organization. And then finally, the waste and abuse of organizational resources. So if you look at all these things, they're just personal issues or lack of integrity in a person, and it translates more into the workplace. Let's discuss acts of corruption in procurement. And I'm going to define a few terminologies that we're going also to be referencing in our coming slides. I will start with bribery and kickback. Kickback in specific is a type of bribe in which the public servant who influences the procurement process receives proportion of the extra earning that a private company will accrue due to corrupt action. So for example, you give a supplier a tender, the tender is worth 10 million, but then the agreement is they will give 10% back to you. And whatever that 10% looks like, in most cases, you will find out that it compromises on the quality of products that the supplier delivers, or just because there is a backdoor arrangement happening between the procurement person and the supplier, then there is a compromise in what the organization gets in return. Then a conflict of interest, which I defined, is where a procurement professional puts their interest in front of the interest of the organization. So you'll find, like what I said, you exploit a public position for personal benefits. If you're procuring for an organization, you decide that you also want to be the supplier for that organization, or you're running, you're a humanitarian professional and you have a tender for a big construction. Then you decide you're going to start a hardware so that you become the sole supplier of that project. That is where conflict of interest comes in. Then a patronage or nepotism, or patronage and nepotism, is where an office holder grants favors and jobs in return for political support. So for instance, you have suppliers, you give them job because there is something that you need from them. And nepotism is where you extend favors to family and relatives. So it's just giving favors in return of something, or favoring a different group of people. We go to extortion, and this is, I know this is a lot of information that is coming in, just trying to define these terminologies, but they set a good basis for us to be able to recognize corruption in our procurement cycles and be able to call them out. So when someone is receiving a kickback in the organization, then you already know that's a kickback. When someone is the supplier in the organization, you're able to call it out and say that is conflict of interest. When the suppliers in the organization are on Deritus and it is Deritu who is procuring, then you're able to question that and say maybe nepotism is happening here. So we move on to extortion. And extortion may entail causing or threatening to harm a person in order to obtain an advantage, and it does not constitute a win-win situation. So this is why you extort, you threaten either a supplier or an organization to be able to win and for them to lose. In fraud, this is deceitful manipulation or distortion of information for personal gain. So in fraud, this is where you either lie to suppliers or you just steal from the organization in order to have a personal gain, and the organization loses in that. Collusion is just coming together, collaborating together either with suppliers or with other people in the organization to be able to steal from the organization, for lack of a better word, because corruption in itself is basically stealing for personal gain and in compromise of the organization. And then the big word for our today is embezzlement, where it's an illegal appropriation of property or money entrusted to one person but owned by others. So when you have resources that were supposed to be allocated, and this, I think this is a really good case. You're working in Somalia and you have funds that have been allocated in either buying food or medicine for risk areas, but then you decide that this money will allocate it to personal gain. That is what we call embezzlement. And all these are things that are happening in our workplaces, in our organizations, wherever we are working place. And in some instances, they might be mild. You're working with a budget of 50,000 Kenyan shillings, and therefore it doesn't look back when in a 50,000 Kenyan shilling your kickback is 1,000 shillings. It doesn't look back, but then that puts a question in who you are as a person, because the next time you're working for you and you're working for World Vision and your budget is 1 million, then you will always expect a kickback, which is 100,000 of that budget. And what that means is that there is a place which is suffering when you take resources or benefits that are meant for an organization. You know, like people in risk areas are not getting medicine. People in places where there's fire, there's disaster, they get compromised or they don't get what they're supposed to get because you, as a procurement professional, you're taking advantage of the whole process that you're supposed to be managing. With that said, let's look at the impacts of corruption in procurement. So all those things that we talked about, all the kickbacks, the embezzlement, the collusion, all those things, what's the impact of that in our procurement process? The first one is waste of public resources. And this is in regards to when you're receiving that kickback, when you're qualifying suppliers who are not qualified, there is a tendency of increased cost. And increased cost, there are purchases that are made that are not supposed to be made. There are investments that are made that are not supposed to be made. And therefore, this leads to waste of public resources. You'll find, and I'm going to discuss that in our coming slides, that we can see the different corruptions that happen in different stages. And therefore, it's not just the kickback, there are many things that happen. And when you allow this to happen as the person, as the custodian of the process, because procurement is a process, when you allow corruption to happen when qualifying suppliers, you might find out that there is waste of public resources, and that is detrimental to the performance of the organization. The other one is poor quality of goods or works. This is basically when you buy substandard goods, that means that they're going to be poor quality. If you had a budget of 1 million to buy construction materials, and in this case, I'm using Kenyan shillings, you can use US dollar. But if you buy substandard materials to be for personal gain, then that means that that construction will fall down, and there was no need of investing such amount of money if we were just going to buy poor quality of goods and works. The other one is slowed down development, and that's self-explanatory because all the resources that are being channeled to procurement and then you put them for personal gain, that means that we are going to take quite some time before we realize development in our organization. The other one is environmental impacts. This is if you lack integrity and whatever you do in your organization is for personal gain, then it doesn't matter for you if you use natural resources wrongly, if you buy the wrong things, if you get resources from wherever. We don't care whether whether the suppliers we are onboarding have sustainable supply chains and we're just buying from them. Therefore, we're going to have environmental impact. The other one is impact on health and human safety. This really applies to people working in disaster areas and people working in health industries. So if you buy substandard medications, if you do not buy medicine at all, that means that there is an impact on the health and human safety. The sixth one, and we can have an endless list of the impacts of corruption, and all of them are negative. I don't think there is anyone who has a positive impact of corruption. The other one is erosion of public confidence in integrity of public servants and institutions. This is very common, especially in governments, when you know that the money that you're investing in an organization, and also people who are funded by donors, if the donors already know that the money that they invest in the organization is going to end up in individual people's pockets, then they are going to question the integrity of the organization. They're not going to channel more money into that organization because they know that their goodwill and their vision to be able to see other people live better ends up in the pockets of few people. Then they're going to withdraw their support. We're going to question the confidence in organizations, in governments, just because of corruption. And we all know the impacts of that, either in an economy, in an organization, and also in the people who need that support. This slide also just talks about more effects of unethical practices. That means that there is a disregard for standard and virtues of integrity. There is moral decay. I don't believe you can be a terrible person at work. You know, if you are a person who is always taking bribes in the workplace, if you're the person who is buying substandard products in the workplace, you cannot be a different person at home or with your family and with your relatives. It's just a moral decay of a person. Whoever you are in the workplace is the same person you are even with your family. The other one is loss of goodwill from the public, which I've talked about. If we channel all our money or our taxes into a government that is stealing from us, then we do not have, there is no goodwill in that government or in that organization. If you're a development professional or a humanitarian professional, and wherever you're working in, we cannot account for budgets, we cannot show any results in the money or in the funding that we got, then there will be no goodwill from the public, either the people we are serving or the people who are funding us. The other one is a slowdown economic development, because as we said, you get the money, you put them in your pocket, then there is no economic development. The other one is withdrawals from international donors and support. I know most people have seen this or have read about this, where just donors say, enough is enough, we cannot channel more money because there's nothing to show in the work that we are doing. The other one is loss of public or stakeholder confidence in public procurement. People are just like, we don't want to participate here because there is no integrity, there is no transparency in the process, and may lead to escalation of corruption risks in procurement. So that is basically starts with the small things, starts with favoring other suppliers on top of others, then goes to bringing in substandard products, then goes into getting kickbacks, goes back to not buying things at all or reporting you have bought things and you haven't bought, and therefore might lead to escalation of corruption risk in the entire procurement cycle. Yeah, great. If you have questions, keep them coming in, but I think we have laid a great foundation on what ethics are, and when we lack ethic, ethics, the impact that that has in our organization, in us as a people, and in the economy at large. We'll transition to talking about procurement, which most people on this call are either procurement professional or looking to transitioning into procurement, or just looking into adding information and knowledge in whichever professionals they are in. And therefore, we'll start with defining what is procurement. And procurement is basically the acquisition through purchase or lease of real property, goods, and other products, including intellectual property. It's basically systematic buying in layman's language, where you either buy a good, a product, or a service, but then it has a whole process that we're going to talk about it. According to Sproul data of 2013, they showed that in an year, it's estimated that we spend an average of US dollars 9.5 trillion of public money spent in public procurement. Therefore, procurement is not just going to a shop and buying. It's a whole process. There is a lot of money that is invested in procurement as a function in our supply chain. And if we spend around 9.5 trillion in buying just in governments, that's a lot of money. And then it's shown, there is another data that showed that about 20 to 25% of these budgets is drained in corruption. I think 20% is quite a lot. So if we were to think about it critically, so if 9.5 trillion is spent in buying, and out of that 2 trillion of that is either money pocketed by just few individuals in the procurement process, then that means then there is even no value for that, or either we're buying substandard goods when 20 to 25% is lost in corruption. That means we remain with about 75%. So where are the profits? Where are the value for the goods that we're purchasing? And therefore that raises eyebrows on the quality of the goods that we are buying. And therefore that's why ethics in procurement is very key. If we are able to instill the right values and the right mindset for the procurement professionals that are managing this process, then we are able to save around 20 to 25%. And that goes back to either the value of goods or the value that we experience, either as end consumers or the value that we experience as the donors or the funders of projects that go through the procurement process. Let's define the procurement process and the different steps of procurement. For anyone who is new to the procurement industry, I know it's very easy to say that procurement is just buying, but here to remind you that procurement is not just buying, and there are so much that goes into the procurement that we need to think about. There is the planning bit of it, which is the first phase, where we determine what are the needs of an organization, a government, a person. So where you determine what the needs are. The second one is solicitation and contract award. This is where you look for suppliers and onboard them, get quotations, and decide which supplier is okay. This is where tendering comes into place. The other step of the procurement process is contract management. This is where you decide that supplier A is better than supplier B, and you want to work with supplier 3. This is where relationship management comes in. This is where supplier reviews come in. And the final one is asset and disposal, because when you buy, then you also need to think at the end of life of that product or that service, how are you going to either dispose it, or how are you going to manage the reverse logistics part of it. So it's a whole process that goes through 4 main cycles, and there are many things around it. So in our today's webinar, we're going to we're going to dive deeper into the corruption risk in the different cycles. So in the planning, for example, when you're looking for quotations, when you're identifying need, where are the gaps or where is corruption likely to occur. So you might either be a procurement professional, so you are able to summon yourself in a small meeting and ask yourself, where am I more aligned as a person in regards to my values and my beliefs to be corrupt in this stage? If you are an overseer, if you're a manager, a head of a department or anything, you're able to see and be able to name these things out. So when you see these things, you're able to say, this is a chance for corruption to occur. There is an opportunity for corruption to occur here because this is happening. And my reminder as we dive deeper into that is, let's not ignore the red flags. And I think today we are talking all about the red flags in the procurement cycle that might be insinuating that corruption is about to occur, or for us to pause and ask ourselves, is there corruption happening here because I can see these things? So we move into the procurement cycle, and then we're going to highlight the corruption risks in the procurement cycle. First cycle in the procurement is need identification and sourcing. Let me define that for you. Need identification in an organization, we are going to work with world vision in this case for the purposes of this webinar. This is not a case for world vision, but I'm going to work with an example of world vision for the purposes of this webinar. So if it is in world vision and we have a department that is responding to hunger in Turkana, so there has been no rain, people are dying, there's no food, and we need medicine, and it is in the corona period. So the department, the procurement department gets information that we need to procure food for the people in Turkana, and that is need identification. We identify that there is a need in Turkana, Kenya, and we need to buy food for this specific group of people. There is specification for how many bags of maize, how many bags of beans that we need, and we want to see, so what are the corruption risks that might be there in that process of just identifying need, that we need this number of bags of maize and beans in Turkana. The first one is overstated physical requirement. So this is where the individual or the department or the person who is responsible in raising a requisition. A requisition is just a document that says, that outlines the needs in an organization, what we need to buy. So when someone overstates, we needed 100 bags, but someone decides we are going to quote for 150 bags so that we don't supply the 50 bags, and the money allocated to the 50 extra bag will be my personal money. That's a corruption list. So when we overstate physical requirements. The other one is exaggerated price projections. So the procurement person who is sitting in an organization decides that a bag of maize in Kenya is 1,000 Kenyan shillings, but they're not going to give that to the organization. They decide that they're going to put the price projection as 3,000 Kenyan shillings. That is, they put a margin on top of what is the market price, then that is, they exaggerate the price projection that they're going to spend in that need in specific. The other one is distortion competition and favoring particular bidders. So that is unfair advantage through exclusive access to information. Others you will find that you distort competition and favoring particular bidders. So in that case for World Vision, you find that the procurement person, the procurement manager says, for us to get maize to Turkana, we will just buy this maize in Eldamaravine. Eldamaravine is a very small town in Kenya. But then they have ruled out all the other bidders across the country because they have said that we're going to buy maize in just Eldamaravine. And this happens a lot where procurement professionals put specification that favors only particular suppliers. So you already have a supplier in mind, and therefore you're going to put a specification that is very specific to a particular bidder or to a particular supplier. The other one is bribes or kickbacks in exchange for contract award. So still in that case of World Vision, the procurement person decides, I'm going to go to Eldamaravine and I'm going to look for my own supplier, we're going to make an agreement, because I already said in the organization that a bag of maize is Kenya shilling 3,000. That means that I need to make an agreement with this person and say, this is your cut and this is my cut, because I already exaggerated the price projection. And this is where we receive a bribe or kickback in exchange for contract award. The other one is where bidders conspire to fix an outcome of a bid and inflate contract prices, which are then shared between bidders. This is very, very, very common where we have monopoly of few bidders, especially in tendering. So you find out you float a tender for something that is not readily available in the market. For example, supply of, let's say, trucks, which even that one is very huge. But then, like energy, something like energy, you find that there are very few suppliers. You find those suppliers collude and conspire and decide that they're going to put very high prices and decide one person will win. So we either collide as a group of 3 suppliers and decide for this provision of this kind of energy, we're going to put prices that are above the roof, and we've already decided supplier A is going to win this tender and they're going to give us a cut. So with all this in mind, then as a procurement professional or a person who is overseeing procurement professionals, or even someone from another department, and you're either raising the requisition, which we said is sharing the needs that are there in the organization, you're able to spot all these 5 behaviors that I've shown, and that's a red flag for you to be able to think deeper and say, would there be a corruption risk in this process? The second bit of it is suppliers and contractors. So this is where after we identify the need, then we will go out to looking for suppliers, and this is very external. It's not internal. I think we're talking more of suppliers, where suppliers come together and decide to compromise the process. The first one is bid suppression, and in bid suppression, this is where some competitors agree to refrain from bidding or withdraw a previously submitted bidder. So just bidders decide, and if you're in procurement and you have experienced this, I think it can be very detrimental, where you have competitors, you have organizations that have bid for work or for a tender, but they meet again and decide we are going to refrain from bidding from this, and then you as the procurement person, then you need to meet them and offer them higher value for them participating in the tender. The solution for this is either floating the tender to a larger pool of suppliers to be able to get more suppliers who can supply in that, or just getting to sit with those suppliers, if it's like monopoly, a very small market, sitting with them and understanding why they're refraining from bidding and what they're looking for. The other one is divide the pie, and these suppliers and contractors, it usually happens a lot where the market is lean, where the supply is lean, then the suppliers are able to collude and influence the process, enhancing corruption happening in the organization. In dividing the pie, this is where competitors agree in advance the winning bid, like the example that I gave about energy. So a few suppliers come together and decide there's no one else who is supplying this product to this organization. So United Nations is looking for this service or for this product. So what we're going to do is we are going to groom one of our suppliers to be ready to win this bid. So how they do that is you will find that they will quote the other 2 suppliers. If there were 3, the other 2 suppliers will quote very high, like over the roof, and then the other one will be quite high, but not as high as them. So you as the procurement person, you have no option apart from going with supplier A, who has already either been selected by the other suppliers to win and then give them their cut, or they have already decided supplier A will provide this part of the service or product, and supplier B and C will provide this part of the service. The other one is complementary bidding. And I think this is what I explained, but in complementary bidding is bidders agree to submit bids that are either too high to be accepted or contain special terms that will not be acceptable to the buyer. So bidders agree to submit bids that are either too high, like all of them decide, like you can't select them, or they have conditions that they tie you as the procurement person in a way that you have no option. They have special terms that holds you, and that is corruption that is cooking in your organization, and you should be able to call that one out. The other one is bid rotation schemes, where bidders collude to take turns being the lowest bidder. Like the case I said for 3, then they decide this year KenGen is going to win this tender, is going to supply energy for us for 1 year. Next year, another energy company is going to do that. As procurement professional, in terms of supply and contractors in corruption risk, the only solution into curbing this is to be able to extend the pool of suppliers that you're getting, so that you're able to have competitive bidding, and so that these suppliers do not hold you in a way that you're not able to carry out the procurement process effectively. So if you enlarge the pool of suppliers that you have, or you change the strategy, you might decide to do international bidding, then you're less likely to see bid suppression, you're less likely to see divided the pie, complementary bidding, and bid rotation, because then these suppliers, if you open it to the international market, they do not know each other, and therefore the chances of colluding against the organization in order for corruption to occur, then the risks are low. Let's move to the phase of it, which is evaluation and awarding. In evaluation and awarding, so we started with need identification. As an organization, you have done the need identification on what do we need. You've gone to the market where you're looking for suppliers. Corruption might occur, and I think that past slide that we did is a key thing to see, that corruption does not only occur in the organization. Corruption might even occur from outside, because we saw that in the other slide that the suppliers are coming together to compromise the procurement process. And then here in evaluation and awarding, this is where the suppliers have bid, and then you as the procurement professional in an organization, you are evaluating the bid to be able to select the right supplier for you. Some of the corruption risks here might be substitution of evaluation criteria, where you find that you already had the criteria that you're going to use to evaluate the bid, but then you decide we're not going to use this one, or you introduce a new spectrum into the evaluation criteria. So evaluation is basically you want to look at which supplier is able to supply either goods and services to your organization. When you substitute this, or you change the goalpost of how you want to evaluate, then there is a corruption risk there. The other one is delays in evaluation, where you find that individuals or a supplier placed a bid a month, and then you either opened the bid, but then you're taking a lot of time in evaluation. And also, as a person overseeing a procurement process, overseeing a tender, you should be very keen to eliminate this, because it poses a risk in corruption to happen. So if we opened tenders a month ago, then they should not be on our desks. We are still evaluating. A great way of curbing this is having the evaluation criteria and the evaluation matrix way before floating the tender. So already an evaluation matrix is where you have already decided, you've decided that we are looking for ABCD. We are looking for a supplier. We are looking for a local supplier who is based in this country. We are looking for someone who has this financial capability. We are looking for a supplier who is able to give this number of credit deals. We are looking for this credit limit. We are looking for this kind of paperwork. When you already have the matrix or the criteria that you're going to use, then there should not be delays in the evaluation process. The other one is bid evaluation committee members not having the technical expertise necessary to properly evaluate bids. As organizations, we should be very keen to ensuring that the people analyzing tenders and even the procurement professionals, you cannot be having all expertise. You cannot be an IT person. For example, you are a procuring person in UNICEF. You might not be having all the expertise, all the IT expertise, engineering expertise, manufacturing expertise, and therefore you should either open up your mind to be able to learn or include people who have the technical expertise. If you're procuring for IT, have an IT person in the evaluation committee to be able to explain the technical expertise that is needed to ensure that there is transparency and we're buying the right things. The other one is substitution of evaluation members during the evaluation process, where you find we started with a committee of 5 people, but in the process, someone is removed from the committee and someone else is put in place. Then that poses a question. If you already had an evaluation committee to be able to evaluate tenders that come in, they should be able to run from the beginning to the end, so that if something happens, then they're able to own up and be accountable for anything that happened. The other one is entertainment of vendor intermediaries during the procurement process. So when there are vendors like suppliers, there are people from the supplier side who are coming in, who are either bringing gifts or they're coming to consult, then that poses a risk, especially when we are analyzing tenders. If you have worked in an organization where you are opening big tenders, you understand that there is a timeline for opening the tenders, there is a timeline for evaluating tenders, and we should not entertain intermediaries from the vendors. It is we do the whole process, we close, and then we communicate back to the bidders on who won and who did not win. So when there are vendors, intermediaries are dropping into the organization, coming to see how the process is going, then there is a raising in eyebrows on, is there a corruption risk that is happening in this process? Yeah, that's quite much. We have a couple of slides go. If you have a question, you can drop it in. Eric, let me know if that is down sharing of a lot of information, whether I should take a break and maybe respond to one question and come back to the process, or would I rather just go through that presentation?
I think for now we can allow them to keep sending in the questions. I can see we only have one question, but that is from our end. And so I'd like to add our participants to keep sending the questions to the Q&A so that we are able to answer them. And these are questions either on our webinar session today or Humanitarian Global as a whole. Maybe we can take a 3 minutes break, then come back and finish up.
Procurement and supply chain management processes play an important role in any given organization by helping in maximization of profits. This is attained through cost reduction, enhancement of supply quality, assurance of supply, and increased unlocking of suppliers' innovation. This leads to development of strong competitive advantages which are critical in giving a business success in today's competitive markets. To achieve this, more professionals need to be trained to develop critical skills. By undertaking this course prepared by Humanitarian Global, you will develop important skills which are important in your career progression in procurement and supply chain management. Among the covered modules and topics include Introduction to Purchasing and Supply Chain Management. In the first module, you will get to learn more about the environment of purchasing and supply chain management, importance of purchasing, terms and concepts of purchasing and supply chain management, and the 4 enablers of purchasing supply. Secondly, principles of negotiations. In this module will help the learner develop in-depth knowledge and skills in areas such as introduction to principles of negotiations, types of negotiation, factors in negotiation and negotiations ethics. Thirdly, supply chain management. In the final module, you will get to learn more about supply chains, types of supply chains, supply chain management, and other aspects of supply chain management. Apply for this course today by visiting our website www.humanitarianglobal.com for more details.
I think if you have a question that you would like to ask, Eric, I don't know if you can unmute anyone who has a question that they want to ask that they can ask. As we take the break.
Yeah, I think we can do that for now. And for you to get to ask your question, you can simply raise your hand and I will be able to unmute your microphone and give you a chance to speak. Morufu, Raimi, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are hearing me from. I am Moruf Olalekan Raimi, the technical advisor to the Executive Secretary, Primary Healthcare Board, Bayelsa State. My question regarding this issue of procurement, I have some concern, and these are my concerns. During annual operational plan, you are asked to identify your various activities, then you do the costing. At the point you are doing the costing, probably a particular product that, or working tools you need to use, it probably is sold for probably 5 naira. I'm just giving an instance. And as at the point of implementation, it has jumped due to inflation and the rest of it, it has jumped to, let's say, 50,000. How do you reconcile that? And probably based on what you have made budget for, that is what they give you. Now, because when you talk about different forms of corruptions in procurement and the rest of them, at that point, how do you marry both together? You know, when you now factor in the current realities of our economy, you know, into it. I want a more enlightenment in that regard, because whether you are dealing with development partners or you are dealing with the state, you might not be, they will only approve based on what you have done in your annual operational plan and you have done costing for, which probably they have approved or assent to. So I'm a little bit confused in that regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that question. I think that's a great question for our team, and I think for anyone who is practicing procurement, then you see that. And what you said there is you don't want to overstate. You don't want to give a higher price if you're doing it at the end of the year, but then you're going to spend the money in the coming 1 year. How do you marry the two? I think one way to do about it is having a miscellaneous budget where your budget has a markup, and you let the donors or the people funding the project know that if it's costing 5 naira today, then it might not be costing the same in the coming 6 months. And I think everyone can relate with us. So if you have a miscellaneous budget, then that is what you will pull from and have justification at the time of procurement that it's true in your budget you had it at 5 naira, but then due to inflation, due to all those things, then it has gone higher. And I think that's a clause that we put in our budgets. We put that this price is valid for this time that we are doing the plan for. So my advice is have a miscellaneous budget into that, and also have a clause. In the time of implementation, ensure that you have proper documentation and justification of that's the price that it's costing. And one way of doing it is either having reasonable number of quotations from suppliers to be able to justify. It's for sure I budgeted 5 naira, but 5 suppliers in this country have quoted 60, 70, 80 naira, and therefore me buying at 50 naira is a good price. So if you have a miscellaneous budget, that's where you will pull from, and the donors should be able to also give the miscellaneous budget under the argument that the price, there is inflation happening. There are things that might happen and things might not be fixed into that amount of money. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you did. But however, let me create this scenario. As at the time we are doing the
Jackson.
operational plan, the cost of flight is, let's say, 30,000 from one state to another. But now in the period of implementation, the cost of flight is 100,000 for a trip. Then to and fro, that's 200,000. But what you have in your operational plan, you costed maybe 30,000 or 50,000, and it has been approved. Then when you talk of miscellaneous, you are dealing with development partners like UNICEF, like WHO. They don't give room for those miscellaneous, because I have had cause to interface with them a number of times. That is why I'm a little bit worried, because when you put in a budget, they say you are overshooting the budget beyond what they will approve. And then you try to create a safe haven for yourself, but at the end of the day, you are shooting yourself at the leg. So those are my concerns.
Yeah, I think that's quite tricky. Then if there is no miscellaneous budget that is awarded to that, and if you really have to do the planning way in advance and ask for the money, and then it shoots. Yeah, I think another way of looking at it is either incorporating or having a tool that is able to forecast how the market will look like. Or then, for example, in the case that you said about flights, if there is a possibility of then booking it as early as the time of coming up with the budget, then that would work if you're really sure that you're still going to spend it. Because I'm thinking in matters of if there is no miscellaneous budget, that is one, and two, there is no opportunity for you to go back and renegotiate to be added the budget because of inflation, and these are things that are justifiable. Then we need to either be in agreement with the donors, the UNICEF, the WHO, and all these people, that this budget might fluctuate due to the different things that are happening in the world, or be able to do the budget. When we do the budget, then we place orders with our suppliers and whoever is providing. At the moment, that we are raising the budget, or at the point where we, for example, if it's a flight, then we've decided it's 10 naira, for instance, and we really need to travel, then we can place a booking at that point to be able to cap the inflation and the inflation that might occur in the market. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Anyone in the call, if you have feedback, if you have experience in that on how to cap inflation, or on how to be able to plan your budgets better in terms of integrity, and also foreseeing having a visionary mind of how the market might turn out, feel free to advise one of our attendees today in the chat section, and we will review that as we continue with the conversation. So if you have experience with that, feel free to engage at the chat section on how to better manage relationship with donors and funders in terms of budgeting in advance and inflation that might happen. Thank you for that question, which has really evoked our mind in that break. I'll continue. If you have more questions, keep sending them in the Q&A. If you have feedback to the question that was asked, make sure you respond to it in the chat box. So let's proceed where we left off from. We left off at evaluation and awarding. And before, Eric, let me know if my screen is okay.
Yes, it is okay.
Thank you. Sorry. We ended up at entertaining vendor intermediaries during the procurement process, and we're still going to talk more on that bit of evaluation and awarding. The other one is order splitting, or placing of orders for same goods to different suppliers. So in that case where I said about the maize, so you're supposed to procure 100 bags of maize. Where corruption might occur is where you decide that you want to split the order, unless there is very clear explanation and justification for why we need to split the order, then we should not split orders unless there is proper justification for why we need to split that order. If it's the same product, then we should award it to one supplier and they should be having capability of how to deliver that order. The reason why we disregard or we do not encourage order splitting, that's because it is not sustainable. It increases our cost. Supplier A will still spend transportation money. There will be a lot of paperwork for supplier A. There will be paperwork and processing of payment for supplier B, which we would have done as just one shipment. So unless there is proper justification why we are doing an order splitting, that is placing orders for same goods to different suppliers, then we should avoid order splitting, and it's an eyebrows raiser. An eyebrows raiser for when you're placing goods, orders of the same goods to different suppliers. The other one is placing orders above tendered prices and quantities. And I think this is also in response to also that question that was asked. So when we place orders above the prices or the quantities that were approved, then it's a corruption risk. We have all rights. We have an opportunity to be able to question that and ask what is going on. The tendered prices were, we had approved 5 Naira budget, while we are procuring at a 50 Naira budget. If the quantities we had said we are only procuring 100 bags, where did the goalpost change and we decided that we are procuring 150 bags? Unless there is proper justification and paperwork, like the question that our attendee asked, that we can genuinely justify. We have enough quotations, we have enough data, we have approvals that for sure the cost of that flight at the end of last year was 5 Naira, and as of today it is 50 Naira. We have proper quotes from different airlines, we have quotations from different suppliers. Then we cannot buy above what is the tendered price or the quantities. The other one is unjustifiably high numbers of contracts awarded to particular supplier. So you find supplier A is always on the payroll just because and in some cases you will find supplier A is supplying construction materials. When we come to a health contract, they are there. When we come to office stationaries, they are there. And that's a corruption risk and raises eyebrows for us to ask, are there no more contractors in this country? What is happening? Why is it that we are not able to justify why supplier a quite high number of contracts that are awarded to them? I agree, and I can confirm that we might have suppliers who are giving us good contracts, who are giving us good prices, and it's okay to give them contracts, but then we should be able to justify that. There's enough paperwork, there's enough quotations to show that for sure supplier A is the lowest, they're able to meet all the specifications that we are looking for. If we are able to justify that, that is okay and fine. If we're not able to justify that, then let's broaden the pool of suppliers that we have on board. The other one is false invoicing, where you find that a procurement person gets an invoice randomly, but then they do not buy either from that supplier, or they have an invoice for nothing that was applied. Here we call it supply of air because there is nothing that has been supplied, but then we have an invoice for it. So when you have a false invoice, when we have an invoice for things that have not been supplied, then that raises an eyebrow, and that is a corruption risk. The other one is overbilling. So when procurement professionals entertain an invoice coming from a supplier that was overbilled, someone has billed for either things they have not delivered, or they have billed high amount of money for products, then that's a corruption risk, and there are opportunities that corruption is happening in that process. The other one is underperformance and failure to meet standards as specified. According to me, I think this is one very key corruption risk in terms of evaluation and awarding. When a supplier is underperforming and does not meet standards, it's a big red flag in us to say, why is the supervising person or the procurement professional who is responsible in managing the process not calling out the underperformance? When the goods are substandard and we are not calling it out, do we have a share in the process, or are there opportunities that we are not able to hold them accountable because we have part of the cake in the process? So for us as procurement professionals, I think the call is calling out suppliers if there is underperformance. If there is inability to meet standards, then we should be able to either review the suppliers and ensure that they are delivering according to what has been agreed, to be able to eliminate the corruption risk. So we have evaluated, we have identified the need, we have gone out to solicit and run requests for quotations. People have bid, we've gone to evaluate, and we have awarded a supplier. We've seen all the gaps that are there or opportunities for gaps for corruption to occur. Let's move to contract implementation. So we have already awarded and the contract is already in place. A risk that might occur, one, is when we when we accept or receive less quantity or quality or type other than what was ordered. So if we agreed on 100 bags of maize, this specification, then that is exactly what should be brought. If the receiving clerk at the warehouse, at the store receives something that is not in the PO, then it's their responsibility to be able to flag and say, the PO says 100 bags of maize and what was delivered was 70, and call it out with the procurement person and say what is happening here. And it's a genuine opportunity to be able to notice a corruption risk. The other one is partial delivery, which is also in line with what I explained. So if the supplier, we agreed you're supposed to bring 1,000 tools or 1,000 trucks, and you're bringing 10.5, the opportunities for corruption to occur if we are not able to track where we're doing partial delivery. And as I said, justification is very key in the entire procurement cycle. So if you're able to justify where there is partial delivery and it was pre-agreed that we are going to do partial delivery because, one, these are perishable goods, or because we do not need all these things at the same time, or we do not have enough warehouse. If it was pre-agreed and there's a justification for why we're doing partial delivery, then we should not accept partial delivery, because it is an opportunity for things to get lost. It's an opportunity for the process to be compromised. It's an opportunity for corruption to occur. The other one is diversion of goods for personal use, resale, or sister projects, which is very key in procurement. You find we were buying 100 bags of maize. That is what is in the purchase order. It is in the delivery note. But as soon as this hits our warehouse, only 50 gets inbounded and 50 is taken to the procurement professional person's shop. So when we divert goods for personal use or for resale or for sister projects, that's a corruption risk. And I think that is happening quite much than it's supposed to be happening in the procurement industry, that people are just diverting goods and resources towards sister project and personal benefits. The other one is unjustified variation of the orders, where this is what we agreed, and then there is a variation. If we agreed we want this type of maize, you cannot be bringing another type of maize unless it is justifiable and in writing. In writing is very key for anyone. If anything in procurement is not in writing, then it is very easy for it to come back and bite you. So if there is any variation that is happening, if there is any partial delivery that is happening, all these things should be in writing so that we are able to justify that it's for sure we changed quality from quality A to quality B, and these are the reasons, and they are in writing that we are able to produce in terms of audit or when anyone asks a question about it. The other one is delay in acceptance of goods. So this is when goods come, but then they stay without being received by the procurement professional or the warehouse person. So when there is no acceptance of goods, then there is a gap. What is happening? Are people waiting for people to forget that we were supposed to buy? Is there someone waiting so that they can channel these things to their sister projects? And we should be very keen, especially at this point of contract implementation, because this poses a highest chance of corruption risk, because this is where there's an exchange of money and resources that we are procuring. So if you're not very keen, then this area of the procurement process have a great chance of compromising the entire process. Moving on, goods have been delivered into our warehouse and now we need to process payments. Yes, most people might not see this because then payments means that it's about to move from the procurement person desk and moving to the finance department. But yes, there is a very high chance of also corruption occurring at that stage. Now, one is when payment is done before delivery. As procurement professionals, we should strive to ensure that that payment is done after delivery. Whatever you can as a procurement professional, it's a good practice to ensure that you get credit terms with suppliers. Unless there is no way out, you should ensure these. With all respect to suppliers, with all knowledge about suppliers, they have all the rights to their products and their goods, but as procurement professional, if you're buying on behalf of an organization, always strive to do payment after delivery, unless it's justifiable why we are doing payment before delivery and it is in the contract, then that's the only times that we should do payment before delivery. The other one is payment for goods, services, or works not received, which is what I said, procurement of air, which is very common. We pay suppliers. There is an invoice that comes to your desk as a procurement person. You know for sure these goods and products have not been delivered in your warehouse, but then you proceed to forward the invoice to the finance department, and they're going to process payment for goods, services, and works that are not received. The other corruption risk here is selective payment of suppliers. So where you find some suppliers are paid and some suppliers are not paid. And this is very common where the finance representative is included in the corruption cycle. So if the procurement person and the finance are getting kickbacks, bribery, nepotism, whatever the corruption is, then they might have a tendency of paying other suppliers in compromise of others, especially in organization where we have money coming in from donors. If we do not have money as an organization, we are waiting for funds to be released by donors. So the small amount, you find that there is a supplier A whose invoice has never failed to be paid. We will never give an explanation for is delayed payment for your invoice. Always, when the invoice comes, they're always paid. When that is happening, then that raises our eyebrows to ask, why is it that supplier A is always paid, even when the organization is saying we do not have money, we're waiting for funds from the donors. There is a delay in the resources that we have, but there is a specific supplier who is paid every time. The other one is full payment for partial delivery. So we did a tender for 1,000 bags of maize. We've only delivered 100, but then the full PO has been made. If there's any partial delivery and we need to pay, if we really need to pay for partial delivery, then we need to pay for what has been delivered. The best practice overall is to pay after full delivery. But if for any instance we have partial delivery, then the golden rule is, well, however time it will take to do full delivery is the same time that it will take for us as an organization to be able to do full payment for that delivery. And that's a golden rule for procurement. The another one is delayed payment. So you'll find where either corruption is happening, we are trying to remove a specific supplier. Then as an organization, we will spend a lot of time with the invoice of that supplier, and we're not paying them, they will get frustrated and they will automatically remove them from the process. Because if my invoice is delayed for 18 months and we agreed for a 6 months timeline, then I will not be able to deliver any other PO before my PO is paid. This mainly happens when we are trying to eliminate a supplier from the process, or a supplier does not even care about their invoice because they know that they are getting 10 times profit, or there was a compromise in the process in that, therefore they do not care if there is delayed payment, and that's an eyebrows raiser in the payment process of the procurement. The other one is excessive number of signatures required to approve progress of payments. There's a two-way into this. So one, when we have excessive number of signatures, it might mean that everyone who is signing that invoice then is involved. They just want to know, yeah, this is about time when I'm about to get my cut of share from this invoice. So we might look at it when we have a number of many people who needs to start invoice, then those people might be involved in that tender and they know they have their cut from that invoice. The other way of looking at it is when we are questioning the person who is applying, then we need a lot of verification in terms of invoicing. Here the rule is, if we have a problem with an invoice, in order to remove the corruption when paying, if we have a problem with an invoice as procurement professionals, we should call it out, address that issue when the invoice is at your desk as a procurement professional before it transitions to the finance department, so that we're able to resolve all issues. If there is partial delivery, if there is overbilling, if there is wrong bank details, we are able to correct them when the invoice is still on our desk before forwarding it to finance, to be able to minimize the risk of corruption. The final risk that we need to see in the whole process, which is, this is mainly a very forgotten phase in the procurement process, and it is very key for us to remember that disposal is part of the procurement process. The procurement process does not end at that point where we pay. When we pay, we also need to think about the end of life of the good that we purchased. We might need to throw them away, we might need to resell them, we might need to return them for repair. Whatever disposal looks like, it's part of the procurement process. And yes, there are risks, very high risks that might be, there are very high corruption risks that might occur in this part of the procurement cycle. The first one is disposal of items not worth disposing, mainly seen in governments and in big organizations where we have cars that have not depreciated fully. But then as procurement people, we say these cars have depreciated and we need to dispose them. So that's a risk when you're disposing things that are not worth disposing. You find you are in Somalia, you are working on a project, the goods you have used them for 6 months, and that project is coming to an end. Instead of auctioning those things, because there is that option of auctioning the products and creating value for the organization, we decide we need to dispose them just because the donors who are funding that project were satisfied after payment. So as procurement people, we need to be very keen that we manage this last bit of the procurement process. The other one is non-disposal of disposable items. You find that we have things that are spoiled, things that have come to the end of life, but as procurement people, because disposal lies in the procurement department, as procurement people, we still hold disposable items as value for the organization. We keep declaring them as like revenue, like inventory, but they're not really inventory because they're spoiled, they're obsolete, and you haven't thrown them away. The other one is disposal to favored buyer. You make an arrangement with a buyer. For trucks, you need to dispose. For machinery that you need to dispose, you favor a buyer, you make an arrangement, and then you come and dispose to them with the thoughts or with a plan of getting a benefit from that. The other one is disposal to staff without involving competition. So you're the procurement person, you make a decision that you want to dispose a car, which is not really worth disposing. But then the person who is that car is being disposed to is you as Blixen Deritu. You're the procuring person, you make the decision to dispose and you dispose the car to yourself. There is no competition, it's like a giveaway. And that's a corruption in the organization. The other one is disposing items at lower than its real value. And this is very key to machinery. If for any instance you need to dispose machinery, cars, especially for humanitarian professionals who are working in project-based procurement, where a project finishes, we close, we move to another one. A project finishes, we close, we proceed to another one. You should be able to get someone to evaluate the real value of those goods to be able to dispose them at the real value. The other one is releasing items before full payment is received. So you decide you're going to dispose, there is no payment that has been done, but you decide these are the goods. As a person overseeing procurement or as a procurement professional, you should be able to discern this and be able to call them out as corruption hazards. Something very important to note is I've highlighted so many things and we're going to share these slides with you. It's a comprehensive guide to us as procurement professional, as custodians of the procurement process, to understand and see where there are risks of corruption to happen. And we're going to share these slides with you. But the thing is, so when we are disposing things, then we should not always be aware of here corruption is happening. It's us discerning if we need to do investigations, if we need to have conversations around what is happening and saying, how can we improve our processes to be able to curb corruption in our organizations? I am all for efficiency, and I'm a firm believer that one of the ways to curb corruption is to be able to put systems across that ensure there is efficiency, that there is transparency. Efficiency is smooth running of things. So for example, in this slide that I'm sharing in terms of disposal. So if in your organization, disposal is a great area where corruption is likely to happen, the best practice is to come up with a disposal policy. So what a disposal policy says, it says, for instance, my disposal policy says we dispose products as long as it has exceeded its depreciation value. Depreciation value, for example, we buy laptops. So if we buy laptops, they depreciate after 4 years. So that means whatever the case, we dispose our laptops after 4 years of exceeding their value. At that time, we have a calculator. Then we calculate the value of this laptop. We bought it at 1,000 naira, for instance, just top of my mind, 1,000 naira. After 4 years, the value of this laptop is 20 naira. So if we are to dispose it off, we are going to either sell it to people who refurbish laptops and this is the value. So as an organization, if you have a policy across different factions of procurement, then it helps for you to be able to see the corruption risks and curb them even before they occur. Let's discuss the high risk areas in public procurement. High risk areas in specific is just where are there opportunities for corruption to occur in our organizations, or you as the procurement person, if you're managing a procurement, where there are chances that corruption might occur. The first one is urgent purchases. So if you are always making urgent purchases in your organization, then there is a high risk of corruption happening, because then You do not have enough time to run a quotation. You do not have enough time for suppliers to bid. There is no enough time to negotiate. And therefore, things like nepotism, preferring other suppliers rather than others, then they are more likely to happen. The other one is when we are buying for complex technology. Complex technology in this case is things that only specific people in the industry are able to provide us. Then that means that there is a risk for corruption to happen. The other one is sector vulnerability. So for instance, there are sectors that have a high risk of corruption. For example, things like extractive oil, gas, and mining, just because they are resource intensive, like energy. There is a lot of money that is put into these industries, then there is a higher vulnerability for corruption to occur there. The other one is large contracts. So when we are managing large contracts, then it's a high risk area for corruption to happen. When we are responding to emergency, there's no time to be able to assess the need. There is no time to pre-qualify suppliers. An emergency might include when we are responding to people who there is flood, they have no food, they have no shelter, they have no water. You cannot start running quotation. And the best practice here in terms of emergency response, which most of people in this call might be working in emergency response procurement, it's to have procurement plans in advance, just forecasting which risks might occur. So for instance, if we respond to flood, so these are the things that we might require, and this is how we are going to go about it. We already have a list of pre-qualified suppliers. We have contracts with these suppliers. So if we need food immediately airlifted to this area, we already know supplier Blixen is ready, has the capacity, have capability, and we have prices. They're able to respond to that. So as procurement professional, we just organize ourselves in a way that we're able to respond to these needs. The other one is linked to funding schemes, which is a biggest chance of corruption or a high risk area. In this case, where like these are funding schemes that limit the donor to have control over a project. So when a donor just releases the money and they do not have visibility of the project, or they have no control over the project, then those might increase opportunities of corruption happening. We've talked a lot of corruption. So how to identify corruption in our processes? What areas are the opportunities for corruption to happen, or the high risk areas? And we're going to discuss about corruption prevention. Feel free to engage on all the corruptions that I have talked about. If you have an idea of how to curb corruption, ensure you drop that in the chat. If there is a way that you have noticed corruption in your organization and things you have come up with, share that knowledge with your fellow participants in the chat box. As we continue to do that, I'll share some more on how to prevent corruption in our organization. The first one is placement of procurement function at a strategic level. So what means is, if our organizations are able to understand that procurement is very key. Procurement is a big determinant of the success of our organization, and procurement is core to how, whether we are profitable or not. If we're working in unprofitable, in how we manage our donor funding, then we place it at a strategic level. That means that we make our budgets from up downwards. We plan on how much we're going to spend, where and how. Then that means that we place it at a strategic level, and therefore it's not owned just by one person. The other one, which is very, very key that we can all do as procurement professional, is evaluation and appraisal of suppliers and contractors' performance. So when we evaluate our suppliers, we know this is our list of suppliers, this is what they're doing well, this is what they are not doing well. We give them feedback, we evaluate them. Therefore, there is no opportunity for nepotism to happen, for conflict of interest to happen, where I'm still the one who is applying, because then there needs to be a face for whoever we are evaluating or appraising. We go through their documentation to ensure that they meet all the standards. The other one is putting procurement governance instruments in place. There's a lot of governance instruments, and that's like what I said, this is specific into governance, but like things like policy. We have policies. What is our policy in matters suppliers onboarding? You cannot wake up as a procurement professional today and bring your brother or your sister. They need to have this list of documentation. They need to have this list of verification. They need to have this amount of money in their bank. So if we have a policy across different procurement steps, then we're able to curb corruption in our organization. The other one is involvement of users in the process. This is very, very key, especially where there's conflict of interest. So when we involve users, they're able to say, no, we do not want this product, we want this product. There's a problem in the delivery timeline, or there's no problem in the delivery timeline. So when we involve our end users in the process, we are able to curb corruption. The other one, which is very key, which I encourage all of us to move towards, is moving towards e-procurement. E-procurement allows visibility, eliminates manual processes. We are able to track everything from one place to ensure that we curb and minimize corruption. Finally, let's talk quite quickly on the guidelines in ethical and professional conduct, and I'm going to highlight 4 things that we can do as procurement people. The first one is declaration of interest. So if your organization do not have a conflict of interest policy, if it says you cannot have interest, then you need to declare. And I think this is one of the best practices, that any personal interest that you may have, if you are a shareholder in organization C that supplies a particular product, then you should be able to declare your interest in that organization, so that we know when we are buying from Maji founders, we know that you are the one who is buying from Maji founders, but you are a shareholder in Maji founders. So when we evaluate Maji founders as a supplier for this organization, we are able to check out all documents and understand that Maji founders did not qualify as suppliers because you're a shareholder. They qualified because they met all the required threshold. The other one is, the other one is confidentiality and accuracy of information. Ensure that all information that is received in the course of duty should not be disclosed to unauthorized persons and should never be used for personal gain. Information that one gives in the course of duty should be true and fair and never designed to mislead. So ensure that, for example, if it's quotation that people have put in place, then you're able to honor that and hold that with confidentiality and accuracy. Finally, competition, that's any arrangement which might be long-term prevent effective operation of fair competition should be avoided. So ensure that you create room for fair competition across all individuals. And finally, business gifts, which I didn't talk about. If you have no policy, so business gifts is basically what is the policy, or what is your stand on your organization about receiving gifts from suppliers. So you cannot be receiving, for instance, a car from your suppliers, honestly. There needs to be a threshold for what is your agreement. Is it totally do not receive gifts from suppliers? Or is it that gifts that are only accepted are gifts that are meant for marketing, calendars, pens, t-shirts, hats? Or you have a policy that says that you have a responsibility to assess and to decide whether you can take a business gift as long as it does not compromise or it's not given in order to obtain any advantage. How do we ensure that we have clean procurement in our organization? The first one is civil society engagement, just engaging the people in the process. The second one that I talked about is e-procurement system, ensuring that we move to e-procurement to be able to have visibility and transparency in our system. The other one is standardized mechanism. So we have a standard way of doing things. Then there is a comprehensive and unambiguous legal framework. We have, we all understand what legal framework we have. So if you do this, then this is what will happen. The other one is transparency and access to procurement related information. Transparency is very key in curbing corruption. So when we have access to information, there's transparency in how we do things, in how we qualify our suppliers, in how we award tenders, in how we evaluate, in how we dispose, then we have less likelihood of having corruption. The other one is having a process in between on how to manage our risks, and finally control mechanism and sanctions. So how do we control that? Finally, staff management. I'm going to open the floor for questions. I have just this and one more slide to go. In staff management, which is very key in curbing corruption. So we need to agree and manage our staff well, because all these unethical practices, most of them come from a point of I'm not remunerated enough, I'm not valued enough, I don't get enough from the value that I'm giving into my organization. As procurement professional, you'd rather request for better staff management than go the unethical way, as we already saw the impact of this. So the first one is ensure that there is adequate remuneration for the for all your employees, not only the procurement department, even the people raising requisition, the people the finance people, everyone in the organization, that they have adequate remuneration. And also on top of that is being able to understand your entire package in an organization. Sometimes it might not only be in the takeaway. You might find remuneration involves which other benefits are you getting in the organization. Maybe you're getting an opportunity to travel, or you're getting funding to be able to go back to school. You're getting funding for growth and development, whatever that looks like. Understanding that and ensuring that all your employees understand what the remuneration looks like. The other one is merit-based recruitment. Ensure that whoever we recruit, then they are qualified for that role. The other one is regular training for high standards and professionalism. Ensure that we train our procurement professionals, we train the people who are managing our processes. The other one is we have a dedicated code of conduct for procurement staff in matters, I said, like a procurement policy, I said a disposal policy. I talked about how do we handle, so if you, for example, receiving business gifts, what is our stand as an organization? What do we entertain? What don't we entertain? The other one is conflict of interest management. So do we have a plan in place for when I have conflict of interest? Am I allowed to be a supplier and a procurement professional in an organization? So how does my organization view conflict of interest? The other one is post-employment regulation. So what do we do after employment? Having a plan in place for that. I talked about gifts and gratitude policy, having that, and that is very key, having it stipulated in an organization so that there is no ambiguity. Ambiguity is, you know, I am not receiving a car and assuming that I don't know receiving a car is wrong. Then our organization has a clear gifts and gratitude policy that you can only receive gifts from suppliers if they are marketing gifts. And therefore, when I'm given a car by a supplier, I already know that a car is not a marketing gift. A car means it's a $1 million, it's $100,000 car, and therefore our supplier is looking for something from the organization, having a clear policy across gifts and gratitude. The other one is reporting channels for wrongdoing. So if I'm a procurement professional, if I can recognize things that are not going right, how do I go about it? Who do I tell about what is not working in the organization? Great. With all that in mind, with all that knowledge that we have gathered today about how to recognize, how to call out corruption risks in our organization, my takeaway for you is that everything begins with you as a procurement professional, as an aspiring procurement professional, as a manager, as an MD, as a trainer, whoever is overseeing the procurement professional, just being aware and woke of the different things that are happening in our organization, questioning our processes, being proactive in developing systems and solutions that are able to curb unethical behavior, because when our businesses do well, we thrive as our individuals, organizations thrive, and most importantly, the people that we serve, our end consumers, are those individuals in high-risk areas, those people who are having a hard time in this world. Then we are able to serve them better because we are able to uphold integrity and doing the right things. And as we close, that's it on that webinar. It was quite intensive. It was like an entire module of what we do here at Humanitarian Global in one webinar. We are able to provide such resources in our online. So if you would like to enroll for one of our courses, we have quality self-paced online courses that are easy to follow. We have lectures, we have experts who are readily available for one-on-one facilitation sessions. We do these webinars, and there's a lot of value in just joining our program. We have the certificate level, which is 3 months training that you get to start on the procurement journey, which we have indicated the cost is as $500. We have the diploma level, which is the second level, which takes around 6 months. At the end of it, you do a project after the 6 months, and you're able to graduate with a diploma certification. And we have our expert level, which is a 12-month course where you were able to graduate with a postgraduate diploma after 12 months. If you enroll, you are able to get the discounts. Our details are there. You can just go to Google and look for Humanitarian Global. You'll find our contacts where you can drop us an email, or you can call us in those numbers that are provided. And that's it. I'll hand it back to Eric to be able to take questions. In the next couple of minutes, I'll be responding to your questions, any questions that you have in matters ethics, what we've discussed today, or anything in procurement. Eric, you can take it away.
Thank you, Blixen, for guiding us through the good session. And I think before we go back to allowing our participants to ask questions, I can see they have sent a few questions on the Q&A. And I would also like to encourage our participants to keep sending in the questions so that we may be able to answer them. And this may be questions either on our webinar session today or Humanitarian Global. We have a team with us, and they are going to answer each and all your questions. So Blixen, maybe you can join us at the Q&A.
Yes, I can, Eric. I can take questions from the Q&A. I think I'm going to answer them live.
Yes.
I'll take the first one from Eric Yamo, who asks what constitutes a good planning process in procurement and tendering process. So what constitutes a good planning process in procurement and tendering process? That's a great question, Eric, which is also heavily answered in our course. my thoughts are, that's actually what constitutes a good planning process in procurement and tendering process. The first one is having all specifications and all the needs put in place. So for instance, I think I talked about it when you have, so what are the specifications are you looking for? Having that detailed out, what process are you going to use? Are you going to use is it an open tender? Is it a closed tender? Is it direct procurement? So how are you going to do it? If it's a tender, because you said a tendering process, have we identified and put in place a plan for how are we going to run our tender? Are we going to put it in the Gazette? How are we going to invite bidders into it? Having a committee already pre-decided, like putting all the structures in place, thinking through the entire procurement process. So how do we begin? What are our needs? Let's write down our tender document, writing down the tender document, knowing how we're going to advertise that tender, knowing how we are going to shortlist, what are the timelines that we're going to spend, who are the people who are going to evaluate the tender, what are the provisions in things that might arise during the tendering document, and having a mitigation plan for it. So in brief, it's just overseeing, sit down with your team, oversee the whole tender process from beginning to the end, have a planning in writing, plan what will happen, what are the timelines for it, and that will assist it running a smooth tendering process and have provisions for things that might arise that you had not planned in the planned during the planning of the tender. I hope that answers your question, and all the best as you plan a procurement and tendering process. Wow, another 2 questions from Eric Kiamo, who asks, in the evaluation process, what is the best approach or modalities to put in place to avert possible substitution of bid evaluation in amongst high value tender projects? In evaluation process, what is the best approach or modalities to put in place to avert possible substitution of bid evaluation in a most high value tender project? I think I'll give Eric time. I can answer more questions, and then I'll give Eric Kiamo an opportunity to ask that question because I have not understood it clearly. So Eric Kiamo, you can just get ready. I'll give you a chance to ask that question. Live. There's also another question from Eric Kiamo, who asks, how do we handle false invoicing in tender evaluation, and what impacts does this have in short and long term in organization management in a project? This is a great question. So how do we handle false invoicing in tender evaluation? In tender evaluation, so here we have not awarded the tender, we are just evaluating the tender. I think that's what you mean. And I think that's easy if it's at the point of evaluating before awarding. So if it's at that point, then we have a chance in disqualifying that supplier if they're invoicing for something they do not supply. I think it's quite easy to disqualify them at that point. And the impact of this in short term is that you might need to look for other suppliers. Long term might be maybe you need to put better measures, or what are you looking for in invoicing? So in matters where award has been done and there is false invoicing, I think that's more critical, because then that shows a system gap that there's something that is happening internally. There is a corruption risk. If a supplier genuinely has the courage to send in an invoice for things they haven't delivered, or they have supplied air, then that calls more action in terms of, we need to evaluate our processes, we need to evaluate our people, we need to look back at what is that is fostering an environment where the procurement professionals and the suppliers are collaborating to be able to provide false invoicing. I feel it's a more risk when we have already awarded the tender, because it already shows that there's a culture for lack of integrity. But if we have not awarded the tender, then that makes sense because you are able to blacklist that supplier and say, then this is not a supplier who we want to engage either now or in the future. Pavanol Ogutu asks a question of, maybe Eric, you can help me in just ticking off the questions that I have answered so that my risk can reduce.
That's okay, I will do that.
Thank you. Pathanol Ogutu asks a question. Is there a risk for a procurement person to handle accounts payable? That's a great question. And yeah, unless justifiable, I just think when a procurement professional is still the one who is paying, then it raises the question for who is the person holding this person accountable. You know, the process, there's questions that comes in, because if a requisition is raised by another person, but I'm the one who is receiving the goods, I'm the one who is verifying the goods, I'm the one who is paying the supplier, then it raises eyebrows in matters of, if there is an audit query, how do we go about it? If it's for a small organization where you're like a micro organization and you do not have resource to handle that and you're able to justify, I think there's an allowance for that. But for a big organization, I think it's a good practice to have a finance person handling accounts payable to be able to hold each other accountable. I think finance plays a very big role in the procurement process in terms of accountability. And generally, when there is just an extra person in the team to raise questions, to say that it's fine, you're the one who received, I'm the one who paid, then it makes the process more seamless. So I think there is a risk if the procurement person is the one who is handling accounts payable. If it's avoidable, we can have an additional person in the procurement process to make it more seamless. I think that's also the same question. Allow me to digress a little bit. And you cannot be the same person. You're the procurement person who is raising requisition for everything. You're buying and you're paying. So if you're raising requisition for everything, then you might as well raise requisition even for things that you do not require, just so that you buy. So at least if you have people who are raising requisition, then your work as the procurement person is to go through the whole procurement cycle as we've talked about, and then we let the payment be done by the finance. I'm going to answer this question from Yusufu Mansari, who asks a question on why always government department flouts on procurement processes. Why always government department flouts on procurement processes? I'm not sure, Yusufu, if you meant flouts. Yeah, I think I'll also give you an opportunity to ask that question live. So Eric, you'll get an opportunity to unmute Yusuf and Eric to ask their questions. There's also another question of what could you suggest for the prevalence of practicability of such ethical standards? What could you suggest for prevalence of practicability of such ethical standards? Adrafeo Adane, I'll also give you a chance to ask that questions. Apologies, Eric, I think you can unmute for me those Eric, Yusufu, and Adrifio, whoever wants to go first to ask their question so that they can give more clarity, and then I'll respond to that.
That's okay. I think we can head over to the part where we ask our participants to raise your hand and ask questions. And to do that, you can click on the raise hand option, and I will unmute your microphone, giving you a chance to ask your question. And I will start with Adane. Adafrio Adane, are you there with us? Adafrio Adane, you may unmute your microphone.
Okay, what about now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
So
to ask a question.
Yeah, just I have got the response from the presentation at the second part. So I had just already got the point there. Thank you very much.
That is okay. Thank you,
Okay,
Adane.
thank you. Thank you. Okay.
I can see Olian Phillips. Olian Phillips, are you there with us? You may unmute your microphone. Olian, are you there with us?
Hello.
Yes, Phillips.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, speaking to Philip.
Yes.
I appreciate the discussion. Indeed, the public have described our profession as one of the corrupt one. And to a great extent, it is true the procurement department are corrupt at this level. But my question was, how can we curb this corruption in our department? Hello?
Sorry, please ask the question again. How can we?
How can we prevent, or how can we minimize corruption?
I think that's a great question that I quite talked about it quite intensively. But I think the first one is it all starts with us, which is what I shared in my last slide, that it starts with us. If you uphold integrity as a person, then you have more right to hold other people accountable for their actions. So if you as a person, you're clear that you're upholding integrity, you're doing the right thing in the workplace, then the second step is opening your eyes and then seeing all the corruption risk areas that we talked about in the entire procurement process and calling that one out and questioning. So when all those things that I said, when a supplier is paid in advance, when there is partial delivery, when there is all those things that are happening in the organization, you're able to question even members of the department and say, excuse me, I have a question. I do not understand why this supplier is the one who's the only one supplying. Would you make me understand that? And I feel you only have more moral ground to question that when you as a person, you uphold integrity. So it starts with you uphold integrity, you're doing the right thing at the right time, and then you're able to hold everyone else around you accountable for their actions.
Thank you. One more. I had one question also, question and answer. I've been applying to NGO jobs, and my motivation or my part of interest is to capture corruption. But how best can I express myself there so that I can win this job?
Phillips, for that, allow us to get back to you personally so that we can give you the best response, and maybe we can also help you to hopefully secure a job.
Yes.
So kindly allow us to get back to you personally for your second question.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip.
Thank you, sir.
I can see we have Yusufu Mansare.
So that you can at least, it can be easier for you.
Yusufu, are you there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Good afternoon.
Good morning. This is Yusuf Mansare from Sierra Leone.
Yes.
I want to say it's a fantastic presentation. I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much. And I've been admiring at the procurement field, which I want to divert my career in the future. The reason why I asked those questions, that's why always government flout on procurement process. In our country, when sometimes the auditors' reports came out, we saw a lot of flautness, irregularities in the procurement process. So that's why I want to know why always when the auditors report normally, auditor general report normally came out, you see this department flout on procurement process, they flout on buying cars, flout on buying furnitures for certain department. So I want to know why those governments normally flout on it. Is it because of corruption or because of they did not do the process of screening their vendors properly, the competition to choose vendors?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's quite sad that there might be opportunities of corruption. I think my response is just the why. Maybe we might not be able to respond to it in this call because there might be a connection of other things, but maybe a reflection in our processes as an organization there in Sierra Leone. So what policies do we have in place? What measures do we have in place? How do we evaluate our suppliers? Is there evaluation that is happening? Who are the people that are working in the organization? Are they evaluated? Do we need a lifestyle audit for them? It's just a lot of internal work that needs to be done, and assessing what stage of the procurement cycle is more prone to corruption and putting measures into it. So for example, if we evaluate our entire process wherever you work and you determine that the problem is in the supplier that we onboard, then we need to put measures into place to ensure that we have a list of what do we need when we're onboarding a supplier, what are the requirements, who is the supplier that we can onboard. Maybe they need to be registered, they need to be filing their taxes, they need to be from this country, they need to have this number of directors. If we have all those measures in place, then the chances of corruption happening in our organizations will be lower. But my advice per se, or my response to that question is first doing in the work in the organization to understand the opportunities or the high areas where there is risk of corruption.
Okay. Secondly, I don't know if you have a brochure where like someone can do like the course, like a certificate, diploma up to the postgraduate level, like a brochure where I can see all or get all the prizes and various courses.
Yusufu, for that, you can on the Q&A you can give us your details or your contacts, and you can allow us to get back to you for us to answer that question.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusufu. I can see Paul Chanda. Paul, are you there with us? Paul Chanda, you may unmute your microphone.
Wow. Good morning. It's morning here in Zambia, Lusaka.
Yes, Paul.
Hello?
Good afternoon.
Yes. Good morning. So I think a quick one. It was a brilliant presentation altogether. So though I joined in a little bit late, so I missed most of the parts. So I think I had put a question to say, is there any access where I can get a presentation that we've just had today? How can we access a recorded one?
So for that, Paul, I will send you the slides of today's session and the recording to your email by close of business tomorrow.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, you should have them by tomorrow.
I'll definitely appreciate.
Thank you for that, Paul.
Thank you very much.
I can see Hassan Mohammed Adam with us.
Yeah. Hello, dear friends. How are you, Pastor? I'm greeting you all, and I am from Somalia. I suggest I have written more messages the admins in this wonderful session. Then I need really to join in this Humanitarian Global as an student. Really, I have applied most times in many department for as a diploma. Then I have written more messages in here. You have replied, and thank you very much. I request to send us these topics and scenario for our image or for our context, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Hassan. Yes, I will send you the slides and the recording of the session by close of business tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, Hassan. I can see a Joseph Garang. Joseph, are you there with us? Joseph Garang? You may unmute your microphone. Joseph Garang, are you there with us? Okay, it seems that Joseph has, yes, Joseph?
Yes.
I
Yes,
can hear
are you getting me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm very fine.
This is the first time for me to attend your webinar. So last time I have applied for food security and light duty emergency. And I am asking whether if you can allow me to pay little by little until I wind up with the study, because it was last year actually 2021.
Joseph?
Sorry to come to ask something that is not related to procurement.
Let me do this, Joseph. I will reach out to you after the webinar session, and we are going to talk about the concern that you have. I hope that is okay, Joseph.
Then second to it also.
Yes.
Yeah. Will you able to share with me later on the presentation, because I've just joined lately. I was from the field, and then when I came, I found today there is a session presentation regarding the procurement.
Yes, I will send them to your email by close of business tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Joseph. Then also we'll talk later on regarding my concern.
Yes, we will do that today.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for connecting me.
Thank you, Joseph. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time, allow us to come to the end of the session. But before we do that, I want to again show you where you can post your questions on the forum. In case you have a question that we were not able to answer, you are always free to post it on the forum. And to do that, you can head over to our website, www.humanitarianglobal.com. And once there, you can see a HG community. You can click on it. And once you click on it, it should bring you to a new page where you are required to create an account and log in. And after that, you should have this page that shows you the different forums that we have, or the different groups that we have for the different participants. We do have one for people of the meal forum. We have those for the SDG work. We have one for sanitation, that is under the WASH forum. We have one for the nutrition. We have one for the health. We have one for, again, meal, different courses that we do have. And for you to post, you simply click on the open draft. On the open draft, here you can get to write procurement, and then you get to select the procurement and supply chain management. And from here, you're able now to write your question. For example, you can ask, what is e-procurement? And again, after that, you get to create a topic. And now once you click on the create a topic, your question is going to be posted. And our team from a Humanitarian Global or anybody else under the procurement forum will be able to answer, and you and the team also are going to have a great conversation. And that is how we are going to keep growing our procurement knowledge, keep interacting with each other so that we can further the procurement forum and also get to share our different knowledge sectors. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, allow us to end the session for today. And before I end again, you can also follow us on our social media pages. That is Humanitarian Global on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also on YouTube. And once you go to YouTube, you can also view some of the other webinars that we've had. We've listed all our webinars on our YouTube page. You can kindly join us there and view it from YouTube. With that, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Have a good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're watching us from.